you know.
It is, man. Well, because things were changing rapidly, and so bands were getting a little bit more extreme with their approach and their names, and flyers were. I mean, I preach this all the time to the young kids, and not as an adult telling you that, in my day I walked 5 miles to school in bare feet type of thing, but it's kind of like likening it to a calculator. You should know the math, the workings, the mechanics of how a calculator figures stuff out. So just as today, shows are promoted via the internet essentially, and back then though it's more physical. To know about a show, you would have to find a flyer posted somewhere, get the word out, and so it was important to go flyering and go to the shows the week before and flyer the parking lot, or put them up everywhere. We couldn't put them up online, and so you had to put them at key points like record stores we're talking about that were meeting places for metal and stuff. You put those flyers up there. And flyers were a bit of a lost art too, because we would cut and paste, literally. That's where the term came from. And you make your own flyers, which was in itself kind of a little project, like you said, Jason. Let's put these flyers together, and we got to go make 300 of them. So who's got the money to go do that? Well, let's pitch in, and do it. And then you go flyer, and you just hand flyers out. And
I used to draw flyers for my friends in San Antonio bands. I used to do flyers for, especially a band called Psych. And I used
Psych, okay.
Yeah, I used to do their flyers all the time. And I was never a musician, but I was always in the scene. And the flyers were like, you go to the record store, obviously, to flip through the records. But I got as much enjoyment out of looking at the flyers and seeing who's coming to town, and wow, that artwork is awesome. And that name is like Rotting Corpse. Wow, that's got my attention. So the flyers were, as much, they were as interesting to me as the music that was being sold at the store.
Because think about it, man, Dave, if you think about it, it's hitting a nail on the head. And the reason being is that we could get creative with a flyer. We could go, hey, man, let's put this skull right here, stabbing this dude in the eyeball. And out of the eyeball will come the name of the band, man. So you can get like creative and create these like kind of cool little, little one-page, little crazy ads, for your thing, which would be interesting to look at, And so I agree. Definitely. There was a little bit of an art form to it.
There was an art form. And if you were involved in it, like you said, whether you're cut and pasting or like me, if you're drawing, you get fully invested in that aspect of it. It does become a project, and it's sort of your stamp, and you're going to go plaster this all over town. So you want it to look cool, and you want people to...
You want to grab people's attention somehow.
Yeah. So, it was like...
Speaking of that, then I'm sorry to interject, but it reminds me of this because Steve Murphy so we were very keen on that, okay? And just by luck, Walter's stepdad, Frank, was the president of a printing company. So we got good deals on printed stuff. So we decided the first flyer we would do for our very first show should just be badass. And I wish I should have been more prepared, but it's a flyer. I'm sure it's online somewhere, but we made the flyer on Carter cardstock, and it was the Rotting Corpse for our first shows at Rascals. But we printed it on reflective silver type of paper.
I remember that flyer.
Yeah,
I remember that flyer.
Cost a fortune to do, normal wise, but we had to pay for them, but we got them at whatever the cost deal was to print it. But we thought that was really important to make an impression, make this crazy harder stock silver flyer that reflects on you type of thing, and people won't forget that. And
that's metal.
Yeah,
it was metal. It said so on the flyer. It's right. I think I put on there, it said total thrash, death, speed, hardcore metal. My friend always made fun of me going, dude, I know that when I went to your show, it wasn't just going to be partial metal. I knew it was going to be total metal, because that's what I put the thing. You put total thrash, speed, hardcore, not partial. It's like, it was total. Yeah, it was complete, man, 100%.
You got 25 adjectives on your flyer.
Yeah.
Tell everybody how bad they're going to get their ass kicked.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this. I don't recall if you were still in Rotting Corpse or not, but this Dark Angel tour.
Right when I left the band.
You left right before that gig?
Correct. Yeah, but I left just before that started going down. But that was another example of Walter making a badass poster out of that
Yeah.
flyer because we had the advantage of getting them done, you know, at a reasonable cost.
Yeah, that's like a 28 by 14 or 28
Yeah.
by 17.
It's a cool poster too. I
Yeah.
think I have one here, but no, I left the band by that point in time. I decided I had enough of what I thought were the limitations of thrash metal type of thing, and I just wanted to just do something a little bit different, you know. And but yeah, I left the band. They went on to do quite a bit of work after I left Rotting Corpse.
I remember that. I used to have that poster, and I think I think I got it at a record store when Anthrax and Metal Church were doing an in-store, and I had nothing else for them to sign, so they signed the back of that poster.
Wow.
And so I always had the poster, but I always had it turned around so I could display the autographs instead of the actual poster.
But you know what? That's like a bonus when you find it years later. It's like, holy shit, Anthrax and Metal Church are on the back of this Dark Angel Rotting Corpse.
Dark Angel thing, man. They got Kurt Vanderhoof to sign it.
Yeah. What is the status of Rotting Corpse today? Because I know you hasn't the band reactivated over the years?
Well, kind of. Just to on and again and off again. We got together to do a memorial for Luke Brewer, who was the guitar player that replaced me eventually. He passed away a few years ago, and so we got together and did a little bit of a reunion show at a local club here, and that was lots of fun and good times. And right now, what's happening is Steve Murphy, the bass player, has just taken up the mantle on this, but he's got to where he's all the demos that Rotting Corpse did are going to be released on vinyl for the first time. So that's coming out here in the next month or two on Turkey Baster Records. And so there's a little bit of online hoopla going on for Rotting Corpse. Steve has been throwing everybody down memory lane with photos and stuff lately. And that's really all that's going on is the stuff's getting released on vinyl, and may do a show or two just to commemorate it and have some fun again. You know, I don't have time to do extensive shows with Rotting Corpse, but it'd be fun maybe to do one or two things here and there, you know.
Sure. Yeah. I think that here's a good segue. You were working on Solitude maybe during your last moments in Rotting Corpse. You started to think about your next jump, if you will.
Yeah, for sure, man. It was no secret that I like more heavier stuff from the get-go. When I formed Rotting Corpse, I had to admit I sort of settled a little bit in that. What I mean by that is I was always very much into the Sabbath sound. For me, that was just the top shelf. That's what I wanted to associate most with metal, was that Sabbathy sound. And so I always wanted to do a band that was in that vein, even really super early on. But you know, finding anybody into underground metal in early 80s was really tough. And finding anybody into underground Witchfinder general metal was impossible.
Right, or Trouble, or even
nobody was into
go deeper into that.
There was like literally a handful of bands doing the Sabbath sound, which was really what appealed to me. But when I got someone who just said they were into bands like Metallica and Sabotage, I'm like, that's fine. Let's just go with that, and Slayer. So I went thrash for a little bit because I loved that as well too. But so it was hard to find people into like really heavier stuff like that. And what was the question?
So no, I was
formation of Solitude.
Yeah, I was moving towards that sort of like the split, right?
Well, right.
Amicable, like moving into your new thing, which would have been Solitude.
Even in the early days, in the beginnings of Rotting Corpse, they used to kind of make fun of the fact that I was always complaining that we didn't have heavy enough songs. Walter came up with that song "War on Drugs" to appease me because it was a slower, mid-tempo, down-tuned song. Here's your freaking doom song, dude. So I'm like, oh, okay, something heavy. I always wanted to play heavier and heavier. Right. In my world, if I would have had Rotting Corpse be exactly the way I had envisioned it at the time, we would have come off sounding like Celtic Frost or Obituary or Death or something. I wanted it to be really heavy and thrashy. It went more of in a punky direction, which is fine too, but it wasn't where my head was at. But we would goof around with early Candlemass riffs and Rotting Corpse even, you know, so when I left the band, it was just obvious for me to go pursue exactly what I wanted to do music-wise. Damn the consequences, whether people were into it or not, which they weren't. I just had to do what I wanted to do, make metal music that I thought would stand the test of time. That was my goal with Solitude. It's like, you know, I'm going to dig back into my roots and remember about Judas Priest, Stained Class, remember about Black Sabbath, remember about classic heavy metal, classic hard rock. And that's what I want to do, is create classic, hard, heavy metal music the way I see it, which is doomy and thick and heavy, but melodic. That was the beginning of Solitude right there, coming right out of Rotting Corpse.